Some mistakes can cost money, some mistakes can cost lives, some have the potential to cost both. 4 years ago, Afghans were desperate enough to cling to the bottom of airplanes. What they were fleeing? A return of the Taliban, the abandonment by international forces. Today it was revealed that some wishing to flee, some who had helped UK forces, had their personal details accidentally leaked by a member of British defence personnel.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I wish to make a statement on a significant data protection breach from February 2022 relating to the Afghan relocations and assistance policy. This led to the High Court granting an unprecedented super injunction and the previous government establishing a secret Afghan resettlement route.
4 years ago, Western forces pulled out of Afghanistan and the Taliban seized power. The following February, the personal details of nearly 19,000 Afghans who had applied to move to the UK were leaked. But that leak was not discovered until 18 months later. And swiftly, a super injunction was applied. Soon after, a new secret scheme, the Afghan relocation route, was set up to get those deemed at risk to the UK. All secret until today. So far, 4,500 people have come to or are en route to the UK on this secret scheme, and 2,400 more are due to come, but still in Afghanistan. Those people who had their data leaked and are still inside Afghanistan, how nervous should they be right now?
The Taliban are now in government, so they have access to records of people anyway. So, you've got to consider that those people who were in the army, who worked with NATO, that information is presumably now available to the Taliban because they've taken over Afghan government records. So the leak is not the sole source of information to the Taliban if they wanted to go after people. And there seems to be little evidence that that's what they're currently doing.
The lawyers whose clients were included in that data breach and still in Afghanistan are less optimistic.
How are they at the moment?
That they're very scared. They believe that their life is at threat. A lot of them seem to move locations, change phone numbers, because they believe it will keep them safe from Taliban, from people who are sympathetic to what the Taliban were doing, because these individuals are seen as people who were enemies of the Taliban.
So do they believe that their lives are in risk right now?
Definitely.
The Ministry of Defence believe there is no longer a threat to life, but this is an error expected to cost £800 to £850 million, an error so vast and so grave it transcended party politics.
Mr. Speaker, this serious data incident should never have happened. It may have occurred 3 years ago under the previous government, but to all those whose information was compromised, I offer a sincere apology today on behalf of the British government.
Secretary of State has issued an apology on behalf of the government, and I join him in that, and in recognising that this data leak should never have happened and was an unacceptable breach of all relevant data protocols.
Warm words, which may be little comfort for those affected and still stranded in a country under Taliban control.
Well, joining me from Westminster is the Armed Forces Minister, Luke Pollard. Luke Pollard, the chairman of the Defence Committee, described this as a mess and wholly unacceptable. He's right, isn't he?
Yes, he is. Yes, when we came to government and discovered not just a secret resettlement route, but a super injunction that was preventing media organisations, the breadth of our country, and parliamentarians, including myself, from raising issues like this for full scrutiny on the floor of the House. That was something that was sat very uncomfortably with the Defence Secretary and myself. It's the reason why we initiated the review of it.
So, just to be clear, Labour originally supported the super injunction, didn't they?
No, we support the Afghan resettlement schemes, and that was something that there is a cross-party support for in Parliament, with parliamentarians of every party recognising that those Afghans who fought alongside or with UK forces over the 20 years that we were in Afghanistan, where there is a heightened risk for those individuals, that we owe a moral obligation to see them safe, and that's why there is strong cross-party support for the Afghan relocation scheme. What there wasn't certainty for at the time is for the secret route that had been set up. Certainly the John Healey, the Defence Secretary, who you've just seen clips of there, was served with a super injunction himself when he was in opposition, having raised concerns around data breaches and the mess of the handling.
Isn't it right, just after you came to power, the judge wanted to lift the super injunction and you were part of an appeal against that? Just to be clear, briefly.
No, that's right. So immediately coming to power, we inherited the threat assessment from the previous government that said being on that list raised the threat levels for the individuals. We wanted to challenge that and assess that. We've taken the time to do so. We've commissioned an independent review from a credible individual with experience in this area who has determined that the huge amount of data available to the Taliban, the amount of time that's elapsed since the data incidents, and the way that the Taliban is going after people that are a threat to their regime rather than people who worked for the former regime means that we could take a fresh look at that risk assessment and come to a new decision. We did that. We communicated that to the High Court and it's lifted the injunction.
Are you entirely comfortable that people who remain in Afghanistan, who are on that list, who are only being told today about the data breach, are you entirely comfortable that they are safe?
Well, Afghanistan is a dangerous country and the Taliban are an unpleasant regime. The assessment that we've had to make...
And the data breach clearly increased that risk, didn't it?
So that was the assessment of the last government when this was raised to their attention in 2023. That's why they requested a injunction. That's why they started preparations for the secret resettlement programme. As a new government, that sat uncomfortably with us. But to make a decision to argue against the injunction for a different policy, well, that has serious consequences as well, which is why we've taken the time, we've consulted experts, people on the ground in Afghanistan, as well as experts that understands what the Taliban are doing in order to inform our decision. We've undertaken that independent review. We've reported that review to the High Court. And on the basis of that review, we have changed our decision as a government as to the risk associated with the individuals on that data set. And the High Court has changed their view on whether to continue the super injunction. And that was lifted today. That enables us to put this into the public domain, to report it to Parliament, which is where issues like this should always have been debated. But I understand the difficult decisions that the previous administration had to make. There were no good options in this, but I think they acted in good faith. Equally, we're acting in good faith in reviewing that decision now.
How much in total do you think this really serious error, as described by the Defence Secretary today, will cost?
It will cost a substantial amount of money. So £400 million has already been spent in terms of supporting those people who have been relocated to the UK because of the data breach. There's probably about the same amount to be spent again to finish the obligation. And that is because those people who have received an invitation from the UK government to relocate because of this, when Britain makes a promise, we should honour it. That's meaning that the total cost of this will be about 850 million.
The overall
figure. The total cost roughly will be about £850 million, which is a substantial amount of money. It's one of those reasons why, as a new government, facing that level of public expenditure that wasn't being properly scrutinised by Parliament, that the media weren't able to report and the public were unaware of, that sat deeply uncomfortably with ministers. The reason why we started the review process so this could be reported to the public.
Sorry to cut across you, we haven't got much time, but that cost includes 7,000 or so people who, had they not been on this list, would not have been allowed to come to the UK. That's right, isn't it?
That's right. So there's the Afghan response route, the secret route that was resettled, will have, when it concludes, about 6,900 individuals would have been resettled in the UK because of that serious data breach under the last government in 2022. That will cost 850 million in total. Our focus now is, having shut down that scheme, is to complete and honour our obligation to those Afghans who served alongside our forces in full, relocating everyone from all schemes and concluding that by the end of this Parliament in 2029.
Luke Pollard, thank you very much for talking to us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, joining me now from Stanmore is Labour councillor Peymana Assad, who was born in Afghanistan. Peymana Assad, can I ask you, first of all, you heard the minister there saying that the risk assessment has changed. That's why they've lifted the super injunction. They don't believe the risk remains. What do you say about that?
I think there's a gap in understanding actually here. I know the minister said that they've inquired and consulted with experts on this issue. But it's not widely reported in the Western media, but Afghans who served with the UK mission in Afghanistan, specifically those in the Afghan National Defence and Security Forces, including women, they have been killed, tortured, disappeared by the Taliban in retribution cases. This has been ongoing for 4 years. And just because it's not reported widely in the Western media does not mean that the risk has subsided. People who opposed the Taliban yesterday and 3 years ago or 4 years ago still oppose the Taliban today, and they still have a threat to their lives.
So the Defence Secretary today quoted the Rimmer report that had concluded the acquisition of the dataset by the Taliban was unlikely to substantially change an individual's existing exposure. You don't accept that?
I really disagree with this part of the Rimmer review. I have not read the full report as of yet. I can only go by what the Secretary of Defence stated in the House of Commons today. I can say that I think that his apology is genuine. I welcome his statement and his commitment to honour the promise to those 600 that were agreed to come to the UK under this secret scheme, because I think that this holds the thread of trust between the British forces who served in Afghanistan and Afghans who served the UK mission in Afghanistan. But I disagree a lot, and I think there's a gap of understanding here in this review about the current situation on the ground in Afghanistan and the threat faced by Afghans, not only those who oppose the Taliban today, but like I said, people who opposed the Taliban 20 years ago still oppose them today, and their lives are still at risk today. We have to remember that the Taliban are socially engineering Afghanistan into an extremist base against the values of democracy, women's rights, and all the values that we hold dear here in the United Kingdom.
I mean, you are in touch with many people still in Afghanistan, many of whom may be on this list. What are you hearing from there today?
I think there's a feeling of great betrayal, that this is another salt on the wounds of Afghans who feel betrayed as a nation by their allies in general, not just the United Kingdom, but the United States. I do have to say, though, that whilst there were 18,000 people on that list, and some of those have already been killed by the Taliban, it is quite clear that they have been retribution attacks against them. We don't know if that's because of this data breach in particular, or if it's because of information held by the Taliban previously. As I understand, the Taliban had infiltrated Afghan ministries prior to the takeover of Kabul in August 2021. However, this puts so many people at risk because now their information is accessible by the Taliban, and we know that the Taliban has been using harassment against extended family members as a way to get access to individuals who served with NATO in Afghanistan.
And I just want to ask you, what do you think about the government's overall messaging on this? On the one hand, saying that, we believe that the risk is no longer substantial. And at the same time, the message they send out today to people in Afghanistan who were on this list, they're saying, ominous sounding advice, be vigilant, don't take phone calls from people you don't know. That doesn't exactly sound as if the government is sure there is no threat, does it?
I think it's incredibly heartbreaking and tragic that those who were on this list weren't informed straight away of the data breach and therefore could not take all the actions necessary to keep themselves safe, and that this information has come so late to them. But I also think that your viewers should be aware that any Afghan who accesses any scheme to come to the United Kingdom has to go through vigorous security checks. They have to prove through documents, through photos, through personal statements of those they served with, that they have a right to come here. So I think it's a bit unfair to say that they simply came here because of a data breach. I think that is definitely a factor, but as the Defence Secretary said in the Commons today, that everyone is security checked at the highest levels before they arrive in the United Kingdom.
Peymana Assad, thank you very much for talking to us today. Thank you.